of competition around, especially on defense for the Falcons, where you bet correctly this year. Because as you guys know, in the offseason, Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith absolutely went to work to make sure that the situations they found themselves in last year, with especially a depleted secondary, that they had the reinforcements to compete this season. That said, of course, guys were back at Flowery Branch yesterday. Jarvis, you were right there to see it up front. And of course, the strength and conditioning today, that is the way that the Falcons decided to wrap up mandatory minicamp. But let's take it back to what you saw yesterday, especially when you started getting your eye on some of those competitions that we kind of teased Tuesday and Wednesday. What is it that you saw? Let's go secondary first. You look at the safety position, in particular, maybe the backups, because you could make the case that from a safety perspective, Jessie Bates and Richie Grant are those guys. But let's start there. What are your thoughts on whether or not they have shored up those positions, and also what it looks like for the potential for backups with the likes of Jalen Hawkins?
I look at it like this. Jessie Bates ain't going nowhere. That man getting paid all the money in the world to be the starting free safety for this team. So that I'm not concerned about that. Richie Grant, I feel like, being that he was a second-round pick, Jalen Hawkins was drafted by the previous regime. So, everybody got to keep those things in mind when you start talking about having conversations about who's going to compete for who. And, I understand the whole competition piece, but there are certain instances where, hey, this is the guy that they really like down at the Senior Bowl, and they brought him in. And he's been pretty versatile since he came in. He was forced into play in the nickel spot and did okay, in that. Now he's moving from the free safety spot down into more so the strong safety spot, being more so in the box sometimes and being able to come downhill. That's kind of more so of his game. So I'm interested to see how that plays out going forward. Now, the interesting thing, and I feel like you brought up an excellent point yesterday when you talked about the whole Mike Hughes and Dee Alford piece, because a lot of people saw Mike Hughes being brought in. Oh, yeah, he can play inside and all that stuff. He's going to be the starting there. What you got right there? Because Mr. Dee Alford was going in with Jeff Okudah, A.J. Terrell, Richie Grant, and Jessie Bates. Those guys were subbing in all at the same time, because you know why they're doing that? Because so they can get familiar with each other, because more than likely, those are going to be the guy in that nickel starting secondary look once on third downs when, teams are going to pass the ball. So I think that's going to be very interesting to watch, because Dee Alford is a guy, he made some plays last year, guys.
Yes.
Like, don't forget that. That means a lot to coaches, because, this coaching staff brought him in. He had some time in the CFL. So, and we saw him making plays. We're like, oh, okay, Dee Alford right there, doing this thing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So once he got acclimated to the game, you started to see him get progressively better. And that's what you want when you have that pro scout type situation that Terry Fontenot, that's his background. So he's starting to come around. So he's the guy that, to me, that's going to be in that conversation for that starting nickel spot. And, unless barring any injury or anything like dramatic changing about that, I feel like he's going to be there once things kick off in September.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting, too, that when the conversation turned to Dee Alford for Ryan Nielsen, he also was very familiar. And remember, like you said, this may actually be a good thing for Dee Alford, too. Of those guys that are kind of competing to see kind of where they can fit in, Dee Alford, somebody that Ryan Nielsen got to see twice last year. And he got to see him in action and actually talked about that as well. So some of that historical perspective could be a benefit for Dee Alford. And for Jalen Hawkins, I think the other piece for him is he's going to have to treat this like he's auditioning. Like literally, because like you said, he's not a Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith selection. He's not a Ryan Nielsen selection, if you will. He's somebody who is legacy. So it'll be an opportunity that he needs to take advantage of, especially as the Falcons approach training camp, to show that there's a place where he could be not just on defense, but also kind of show your worth, maybe special teams.
Yeah.
So there could, and because again, right, exactly. And that way, even if you can show some possible worth there, then the potential for you to maybe make the case for why you should get more reps on defense and get more playing time could be there, because the versatility that the Falcons are looking for and the willingness to move from point A to point B is there, especially like you said, when you talk about moving from like free safety to strong safety and just kind of having the not just the flexibility, but also the acumen and the ability to be able to do that. So that said, another space there where there is a crowded room where folks better be ready to show each and every day what they can be, what they are made of and what they can be in this particular defense is that linebacker core. You know, we were talking about it just yesterday when you think about the fact that, say, you know, Devin White was slightly disgruntled and, you know, looking to possibly take his talents out of Tampa. But this room is already locked and loaded. And in particular, I was thinking about this. We of course, are looking at, and this is just, come on now, this is a depth chart in the middle of basically voluntary and now mandatory OTAs, right? But as far as the depth chart goes today, we're looking at a linebacker room that's saying, hey, okay, Lorenzo Carter, yeah, they brought you back, but if you want to do more than have, say, you know, 40% or 50% of the reps, then you've got to show why they should give you that opportunity, because this is also going back to players who it's kind of a different kind of prove it year for Ade Ogundeji, right? He's not on a contract like maybe a veteran. Jarvis, is this not a prove it year for Ade in terms of where he can fit in that linebacker core?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about, and let's just do it like this. Let's just use them, you know, edge rush, because a lot of times, like, we haven't got a chance to really see what they're gonna run most of the time. You know what I'm saying?
And whether or not they're gonna line up.
But as far as from an edge rusher standpoint, oh my gosh, like Ade has to. As the old folks you say, piss or get off the pot. You know what I mean? So I think those are some of the things that you got to make sure that you know, stay in line with as far as that development piece. Because we talked about, you know, what Richie Grant and his progression. You saw, you know, that first year had a couple struggles, had to play a position that he had never really played before like that. You know, he was able to be serviceable in that spot. Then second year, last year, went into it. He made that jump. Like, he started all the games for the Falcons, and he made some plays for you. So, you know, I think that Ade, he has to do something. He has to show something. He has to flash and give me something, because Arthur Smith has been continually talking about competition. And this is probably going to be the most competitive training camp that they've ever had since they've been here. I'm going to record and say that right now, because, like you said, when you think about, you know, them having money right now, they have the money to go out and go get some talent, and they didn't have to go bargain basement shopping or whatever, hitting the blue light specials at Kmart and all that stuff. Dang, Kmart mentioned. How about that, T? I'm proud of myself. But yeah, like when you think about what they are up against and what Arthur Smith is trying to preach, these guys get the message. I think it's loud and clear. T. I got a chance to talk to Matt Hennessy yesterday as well, and like he was talking about how people really don't understand how competitive the NFL is, because the guys can be brought in every year to take your spot if you aren't careful. So yeah, I think right now this needs to be a situation where, hey, Ade, you better get on it, and also just a little nugget too, Michael Walker, you better get on it as well.
Yeah, and that's one of our guys who we've always been looking at and rooting for and seeing some progression. But yeah, this could be a prove it, make it, break it year for him. A group where there is not a prove it situation per se, competition, but maybe for once, Jarvis, in the Arthur Smith regime, most definitely, there's not that much for the O-line. And instead of the word competition being used for them, Chris Lindstrom and others talked about another word, and that's consistency.
Obviously working together as a unit, as an offensive line, Caleb and Drew, but they're doing the same thing on the other side. Even to the sense of, like, if Jake makes a call all the way on the left side, it's got to get echoed all the way down. And so that's not a skill that we're relearning. It's kind of something we're tuning or working on instead of having to, like, fully learn a new skill.
Yeah, like that. Like, this is becoming like my favorite Falcons player. I love me some Chris Lindstrom, because when you think about, like, you see the growth from him, you know, from day one as a rookie coming in, being a little bit unsure of himself just from a confidence standpoint, and then you start to see him just blossom and flourish and like, hey, I'm here. I've arrived. I know I can be one of the better guards in the NFL, and I got the contract to back it up now. So I think when you talk about that communication piece, that continuity, that was our magic word early on in this week. That continuity, it matters so much with the offensive line. That's why I say everybody don't have to be great. but everybody got to be on the same page. Yes. And I think that's what when you hear him having those type of conversations or speaking like that, that's the thing that you look for when you're talking about offensive line taking that another step, right? You know, not only being one of the better running blocking teams in the NFL, but transition and say, hey, we can pass block too.
Yeah, because I was looking at one statistical ranking, and not that this is bad, Jarvis, going from 3 to 7, but the fact of the matter is they were third in run protection, but then they were 7th overall. So to have that gap of, that 4th spot ranking, again, not to say that's a huge deal, but it does give notice that there is an opportunity for improvement. And we all know it's there, but you start thinking about what that could do for the offense. Keep your run protection where it is, but if the pass protection can be there as well, then once that run protection establishes what it is that Arthur Smith and Dave Ragone want to do on the ground, then it really opens things up for things to go well for the pass game. You think about the fact that now you've got that bigger body in Matt Bergeron. So bigger bodies, consistency, all of it is going to matter in making this an offense that people may see on the surface looks one-dimensional, but will be multi-dimensional in the future.